Alright, PlayStation Repair Augusta, and we're back again today with the second video. It literally says that it has only been 22 minutes since the last video, but as this is three different videos all from the same board, they're going to kind of be close together. I will be taking a break after this, and there'll be a bit more of a lag between now and, or this video and the third one. However, that third and last video will come out today just because it's going to be easy to make all three of these videos happen um, due to it's one machine, and we can just kind of slide it in there. If we can, why not? Alright, so you know what? We don't need, as I was cleaning up, I put all these in as like a little organizer, and they just get in the way. As you can see, I changed the camera setup, and we're going to leave it like this because there will be the third video, which will then utilize that overhead aerial shot so that you can get the full console as it's reassembled. However, after that's done, then I'll be relocating the camera back so that you're not staring at the top of the scope through that camera. So we're going to go ahead and switch this video up so that we are looking through the scope at our work, and then we're going to adjust our board so that we are in a convenient position for you, the viewer, and me, the repairer. And let's get zoomed up. To where we're in focus. I think that's a pretty good focus. Like I said, a while back I did figure out some color correction, and that has kind of made things a lot more visible. As you can see, I've already, I don't know if you can really tell from that high up shot, but I've marked this board with the customer's name and ticket number. Basically just makes it so if for whatever reason, if I'm pulling apart from a donor board or something, that I know which one goes where. And I'm pretty good about keeping tabs on them, but when things get really busy and you're trying to streamline and doing multiple machines kind of back to back where you phase it, kind of think assembly line. Alright, so I want to desolder and remove, then I want to pull all my parts that I need, and then I want to go back and slap them all down. And you'll see that this time, I've talked about it before, that a lot of times for the HDMI, I don't even, don't be a dummy like me. These are ESD tweezers. But this is hilarious. These are ESD tweezers, yes. However, they still are joined via a contact weld, which means they are conductive. And I just pinched the positive and negative terminal of the battery and basically shorted that circuit, and it started to heat up enough so that it started melting, and, well, not melting metal, but melting the flux and whatever is on this tip here. Which, speaking of, as I'm starting to rub on that, we're going to go ahead and glove up for this little repair. And let me know in the comments if you like that aerial view with the scope over it. I mean, our main focus is through the scope cam where we're looking at the board. That aerial shot gives you a different perspective, but it is obstructed. But if you think it's a better view, let me know, and maybe that becomes the permanent position versus where we kind of take that angled shot from sitting more parallel with the scope camera. So it sits in front of it and then comes down at an angle, so you get kind of that angle shot going this way. And like I said, if you think that this is a better overall view that gives you a sense of what's going on underneath the scope with board orientation and whatnot, then feel free to make those comments, and it'll be put into consideration as to whether or not that should be the primary camera setup. And I think eventually I'm going to have to add in another one because it'll just be easier to not have to move this. So we'll keep one camera up top and another one down below, and then we can just switch between scenes when we want to adjust our focus. Call me lazy. I don't like to have to reposition cameras. Alright. Let's see if I can look at the screen and do this. I used to be much better at this. No, I suck at it. There's like some dust bunny jizz on my needle here. I could just see it in the camera that it was looking like it had furries sticking out of it. Alright. And I'm looking on the screen. It's just, I used to only do it this way, even though I had the scope. In the beginning, I didn't like having to stick my eyes into the scope, and I got used to using the screen, and it kind of became like second nature. But I haven't done it in so long that I guess I've just fallen out of practice with it. Alright, and again, I'm not going to use... You know what? We will. We're going to let that wind back down. If somebody... Here's a thing we'll post out to the community, or I'll express out to the community, and someone can feel free. I'm probably just going to have to do it myself, but it drives me insane that the quick, you go to pick it up and it instantly turns on, which is great if that is what you want. And, you know, again, I'm cheap, like many other people. There is a model that has a kick switch. It's got a foot pedal, and you can activate and deactivate that way. That allows you to turn it off even though you still have the handle, which is necessary to put new tips on, as well as take them off, because you don't want it hot when you go to remove it, because it's a pain in the butt to get them off, because these are tension mounted, and what does everything do when it's heated? It expands, so it makes that grip even tighter on there, and it becomes harder to remove. And actually, I don't want to use that one, but that may be... Nope, I do have a big tip on an angle. Son of a... I did not turn the switch off before I picked it up, and it gets hot fast. The great thing about the quick, it is quick to warm up. But you can't go sticking a tip on if it's at 300 degrees plus. And that's Celsius, so we're talking about hot, hot, hot. If nothing else, this video will be entertaining because, as I've said before, if it's live and it can go wrong, it will go wrong. And I prove that every time I make a video. Alright, so see, this, I mean, you didn't even hear me do it. It's so easy to put in when it's not blowing hot air. And I have taken tweezers and inserted this and done all the things you're probably not supposed to do, which is like stab it into the wood, or like try to press it real quick, or take the back of my tweezers and bump it. And I'm wasting time here, and I could just be getting the video done, but I do these videos for me as well, and part of that is I get to rant and kind of express my frustrations rather than talking to myself and looking like a crazy person. So now we're going to turn this on. To get back on task, we've got our Ethernet controller, and now on some of the boards this chip exists, on other ones it does not. So if you're going to look for this chip, and you can see from the board orientation, we've got the disk drive connector here, we've got APU here. You want to go to the back side where your Ethernet port is and follow the cable trace lines that come out of it, and that's what I'm pointing to here. These are going to your Ethernet. And if you see this chip, this little square chip with pins all the way around it, that is your controller. And if you've had some type of surge damage, chances are replacing that is going to get you right. If you don't have that chip, well, then you're looking at some reball work ahead of you, and it still may not solve your woes. So we're just going to move this air around, back and forth, circular motions. Everybody's got kind of their own deal on how to do this. If you're watching this video right now and you're like, man, he's doing that wrong, well, okay. Alright. Now the one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to just sit here on top of it. Actually, no, I do have my heat all the way up. So, I mean, this chip we already know is bad, so it really doesn't matter. But if you were just removing this chip to do some testing, some off-board testing, or you're just unsure and you're not really confident in probing, but you think you can handle taking it off and putting it back on, which usually you become better at probing before you become better at removing these style chips. But if you go that route, you want to move that heat around. You don't want to sit over the top of it, because what you then would do, as we talked about in the last video, is saturating the heat. Now, if you saturate it too much, you saturate it to inside of the chip and not. See, as we go around, we're heating the board and not so much the chip. But if we saturate that chip too much, we can actually overheat the internal wiring and components and cause them to fail. Which, like I said, again, in this case, it really doesn't matter if we do that. Oh, that's where you can tell this thing shorted out. It does not. It should have come by now. I mean, at the heat we're at, our airflow, well, we're not completely up on airflow, but we're at 90 out of 100. Because even though the Quake does 120 at this particular model, it doesn't go to 120 at 400 degrees or above. But we should have already been loose. We should have seen this chip come off. And what we're going to do now is just sit over the top of it, because we already know it's bad, and it did not want to go. So now you really want to remember the orientation of this chip. But if you forget it, and you don't have another board to look at, there is a cheat. And right here on the board, there's a dot. That dot is your indicator that that is where the chip's #1 pin goes, and there will be an indicator on the chip that correlates to that. So you should always be able to find that. Now, there are chips where that doesn't exist. Sometimes you have where they have a missing pin underneath them, and you can use that, or maybe they've got a certain shape to their pads underneath, and you can orientate your chip placement via that. There's a couple of different ways to go about it. So usually, just like anything in life, there's no one way to get it done. You just find the way that you prefer. And I think a lot of people go in to start like scratching, marking, drawing, putting dots on the board, and they forget that usually, I mean, it's considered good practice, and manufacturers like to do things just to make it more complicated for third parties, so they may not put it on there, but it should be on there. It should always be indicated, because one, I think it's pretty sure it's part of the standards and practice. I forget whatever the standard is called, but it's also going to help their assembly teams make sure or see instantly that they have an issue, that maybe for whatever reason a chip got flipped the wrong way and it's no longer going to function properly, or could even damage something else if it's been laid down the wrong way. And I just got my arm all up in the way, but that's okay. We're just trying to pull some solder so that we can juice up our joints. And once we juice up these joints, then, and I don't want to put that much down on it, but I want to get rid of some of that lead free and get my nice shiny leaded. I think that's a little bit more of a pillow than I want. So let's see, can we take some of that out? Alright, let's pull a little wick. You know what, we're going to use this little cheapie just because it's sitting there and it's not unraveled. And that went through nicely. Alright, that is a nice pillow. And when you hear me referring to the pillow, I'm talking about, let's take, alright, so let's see if we adjust some of this lighting here. You can kind of see it. I mean, it's just, it shines too much. Alright, there we go. So we don't want to have a mound on top because we need the new chip to sit down over it. But we want enough so that it's got something to grab a hold of. Alright, let's look at orientation of this replacement. This is just a donor chip that I pulled from a donor board. Exact same chip because it was the exact same board. And we're going to look for that number 1 pin on the marker. Alright, I don't know if you can see it as well. Now we got to turn the light back up, and this is the problem with focusing and lighting. Alright, there we go. So now we're not dealing with that shiny subject underneath, and it wanted to get nice, dark, and dim. But you can see now, and you'll definitely be able to see it once I lay it down and clean it, but there is a nice big circle in that top left corner. And that is our indicator for orientation with that circle. And I like to just kind of dip that down in some flux, get it nice and sticky. And then we're going to take back this, and we're going to preheat this area so that when we slap that chip down, it's ready to receive. Basically what we're looking for is for this solder to get liquidous. And it's almost there. That ground pin just wants to take its time. Alright, we got a nice little I'll let that lock in and then use that to release our tweezers. If we tried to lift while it was still completely wet, we'd have a problem where it would just pull back up with our tweezers. And we weren't quite centered right. I think we need some more flux. Alright, come on, let's see you adjust yourself. What we're looking for is to see this kind of, right now these pins are a little bit off, and they don't seem to want to play nice all on their own. So we give them a little cajoling with the tweezers, and oftentimes a little becomes too much. Alright. So now that we've done that, we're going to go for our thin wire of our soldering. Well, thinner wire of solder. And okay, we are using the hook tip. And we're basically just going to use the drag method, which I've talked about before. And this particular flat pack is not very difficult to solder. Probably ideal here would be to remove those two chips, but said before, kind of lazy sometimes, so I'm not going to do it. I think we can get this. I just got to be a good lefty for a moment. You saw that twitch and shake? That's me using my left hand when I'm a righty. Right, back to a right hand. There we go. We dropped a little in. Angle this up. I don't want to stay on any of these pads for too long, because again, that heat will travel up through the wire and can either cause something to overheat, or we're just gonna, these you'll notice I use a lot more flux than I do on some of the other components. And that's just my personal preference. Now, I wanted to go grab my tweezers and push on it, but no, that's not the step we're on anymore. We're past that. There should be enough solder there now that these joints should want to take care of themselves. And if they don't, well then tough for them, we'll make them. Alright, and then now that that is done, we're going to grab some certified repair sticks, i.e. Q-tips. And when you're buying Q-tips, you want to make sure that you get the highest quality, because low quality Q-tips will make all repairs instantly fail. And the highest quality Q-tip that you can buy is the Equate cotton swabs. And if you didn't get the sarcasm in that, then either I'm not good at sarcasm or you're just taking me way too literally. I buy the cheapest Q-tips that I can get, the biggest bang for the buck. We do have Costco here in Augusta, and that's where I've tried. Looking at Costco, I was like, you know, man, it's a bulk supply store. Got to be able to get a better deal on some Q-tips, but they only carry the brand, and I guess it's slightly better maybe than retail pricing. I don't think it is, though, actually. But it's like 3 or 4 times the cost of the Equate. So there's some things I don't like about Walmart. But damn, some of their pricing isn't spot on for what you need. And you can now really see this area that I was talking about earlier, and we're going IPA crazy right now. I just want to make sure I got it all clean. I don't want any of that sticky icky left on the board where it can later cause problems down the road. Now, you can have no clean flux, and guess what? You still got to clean it if you do not heat it properly. No clean flux has a requirement. That prerequisite is that the flux must be fully baked. So it should no longer be liquidous or gelatinous or gooey of any nature. If it is, it's sticky at that point, and it's not a solid, I guess is a good way to put it. If it's not a solid where you can like tap on it, scratch at it, and it flakes and peels off like dry skin, then you have not properly baked your flux, and whether it's no clean or not, it will result in damage to the board over a long period. And I will say that I have not cleaned up every bit of flux from every device, and it has not been a super huge issue. To be honest, I don't know if it's ever actually completely killed a component, but I have seen some where they weren't cleaned and it was years later and the board underneath looks eaten away. I mean, it's like destroyed some copper pads. And I don't know if that was the flux itself, if that was a mix of whatever else they were using, or if it is just that whatever moisture content may be in there, which is probably more so what it might have been, especially if you cleaned it with some IPA. Maybe it trapped and encapsulated some water moisture inside of it. That is certainly going to rust out some copper over time. Now, some of the other things we could have done with this is we also could have like Kapton taped off that south bridge, but I've done this over and over and over again, and I've never had a problem doing that. But if you feel like it's necessary, especially if you're new with working with those high temps, you may want to go ahead and tape that off. Just try to basically heat shield it. Oh, and I did One last thing to show, which I should have used this because I made this specifically for this purpose. Oh, you cannot see that at all. Let's transition. Anybody recognize that polar bear? This is, again, the most expensive heat shield you can buy. Best way to hack a heat shield for different components where you can actually choose your own height and dimensions is the aluminum foil from a soda can. I'm sure that somebody else has had this idea before, but it clicked with me one day when I went to go throw away a soda can and thought for a moment about recycling it. And that made me think, what else could I do with it? And I go, you know what? I bet you I could make a heat shield. And this thing doesn't look like it, but it's got some miles on it. I think I've used this more on my reflow station than I have with the hot air. But I've got a different one on the reflow station now, so I brought that in here, and I haven't really used it that much since. So we're going to do, I see on my end a little bit of shiny here. I don't know if you can see that kind of that coating, that glaze. So we're going to do one last cleanup. Get us a brush that doesn't have all the ick to it. I probably should have checked this circuit before I go into like a deep cleaning cycle, and in fact, I'm going to go ahead and stop. That's probably already considerably better. In fact, I can clearly see now where this part of my little resin line is gone, and I got a little bit over here on the edges, but you know what? I think that is good, as long as we don't have any problem with our joints, because I mean, it's a thin surface layer at this point, so that's got nothing to it. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're going to turn this light all the way up because, like I said, I still got one more camera to get. And then my very first camera, I don't know, it will depend on whether or not I need it for something, but it will more than likely become a giveaway for that camera. Unfortunately, I don't have another microscope that I'm not using, otherwise I'd probably give it away as a bundle. But I want to replace with a camera that actually has the Sony Exmor sensor inside of it, which is much better at low light optics, as well as this one I think has a 2/3, or no, one. Is it one? I think it's a quarter. I think this one has a quarter, which 1/3 and then 2/3 that are even smaller. And the one that I am going for next is a full 1 inch, which is almost your full frame, which if you're a DSLR buff, you know what full frame is. And basically it'll give me a nice big wide shot. And so we won't have to do quite as much moving around with all of this stuff, just because it'll have so much in its view already. And the lighting situation on this camera is actually worse than my other camera when it's done in this AMScope. Something about the way it works with the AMScope, it doesn't agree with it, because this camera was actually intended for an inspection scope, which I just got back the piece from the machinist, which is actually the stepdad to my other half. So that's where I had the friend of the family deal go on. Is that? Hopefully I didn't grab ass at that too much. But, and this is what, don't be like me. Obviously I got a little too handsy here with tweezers. And you can see, especially with heat, it looks like I bored into that just a little bit. And in my opinion, we're getting close here to the circuit layer. We haven't penetrated it yet. I'm pretty sure on that. I might go in a little bit on magnification, but I'd be almost dead certain we haven't gone that far. But what we want to do is check these joints. And although you can see from this we're a little bit shifted to the left, we have no bridge contacts. We're center enough that everything on here is going to be self-contained. And we're going to keep those isolation between the pins. Alright, now we're going to have to, just this particular angle, we're going to have to adjust. This one, I'm a little questionable on that one. But it is super fixable. But I wonder, you're not even looking at this. Damn you, camera. Alright, where the heck are you? Okay, there you are. We're going to focus it on you, and I'm going to watch the camera as we go through this. Oh my goodness, I should have adjusted from the top. Oh, that's actually a really nice view though. I'm trying to get it to where I can see it and you hear that I'm like so tall up in the scope that it's pinching my nose and giving me that underwater snorkel sound. Alright, let's do this. I can't see while that's looking, so we're going to adjust this top part. We need to go up, not down. Alright, this is when the manual focus becomes frustrating. This is when it doesn't want to play nice. Alright, we're just going to solder this and tweak it. For whatever reason, we're not lined up between what you're seeing and what I'm seeing. And I don't think we're going to get it that way, so I'm going to put it where you can see it good enough, and I can see it too. Put some heat on our soldering tip. Go ahead and dab just a little, and I know this is bouncing around a lot. I'm sorry, I'm trying to hold it so that we can all get a good view. And this is where I need to hook up the inspection cam, because that would actually that would fix this stupid issue here, and that is why I was waiting. I literally just got it back, and this is I haven't had a chance to set it up, but this is the situation that I've wanted it for, is so that I can add in that third camera from the side that will do any shot really that I can think of. I mean, it allows me to twist it, turn it, spin it. I have almost a 360-degree axis, and the axis, not access. However, the problem with it originally is that the we're going to adjust so that I'm just resituating now so that I'm at a comfortable height and you're in focus at least enough so that we're no longer both struggling to see here. Alright, so we sop up that little pool that I added. I'm going to throw that away. And we're going to clean off the rest of that residue. Like I said, it allows me to tilt on all axes, or axes, or however that is. And the problem that I was having that I had to get fixed by a machinist was that they had it so that it screwed onto these little tiny threads. And those threads were great as long as the camera was in its upright position and not on a pivot. Once you put it on a pivot, it would put counterweight on the thread and cause it to basically backspin and spiral down onto the table and slam the camera or slam the lens, and that was going to break something very quickly. So, and I'll show this at the end of the video as kind of a teaser where I need to do a separate video just for that part. The component that was made for me, and I think it works perfect. I mean, there's no other word for it than brilliantly simple. It was a quick, easy, simple fix to make something that should have functioned out of the box function the way that it was originally intended. All right, so now this is done. This has been completed. We're good to go. The only thing that we do need to do is we got some cleanup here. I think I see, look at that. That's the kind of stuff we want to make sure we don't have left over. Oh, you didn't see that. That was tucked in here. It actually was all the way in from our cotton swab. Not really an issue except for the fact that it's cotton, so it's going to retain moisture. It's probably going to get dried out on my next step, so it would have been a non-issue. But if you didn't do this next step, you could run the risk of it causing some liquid damage on startup because it would retain a fair amount of moisture. And that's why I'm just using this brush to kind of force this. And again, these are the Chemtech. They're supposed to be, what is that called? No, whatever. God, there's a name for it. I'm going blank. It's time to have a snack, a meal, or whatever, so that my brain's back on track. But dust-free. So they're lint-free. That's the word. Lint-free cloth. So we can kind of just go crazy with it and not have to worry about it adding those chips of cotton into and underneath our components. So now that this has been cleaned up, next and last step here is we're going to turn down our heat. We're going to go with my lowest preset, which is about 150 degrees. And we're just going to kind of strafe the board. I'm seeing a few areas where there's a little bit of some wet flux and probably a little bit of isopropyl moisture underneath this chip. And that is what this heat is going to do. It's going to help kind of blow that out and dry it up. And isopropyl has a wicking action, so as it evaporates, it'll help to kind of pull that moisture out. And this is the step that I said would have more than likely have dried up that little bit of cotton, so it wouldn't have been an issue for us. But you do want to check your area, inspect around, kind of look in underneath the edges, see if you notice anything that's not right, that shouldn't be there. And if you do, fix it. It'll save you an issue down the road. All right. So there we go. We have now, you can take a look as we slide this around, we have kind of blow dried this board, just like someone would blow dry their hair. Warmed it up and got the moisture away, and you don't see that kind of streaking, which you see a little bit of it there. See that thin streak of film? That is a bit of like flux residue, but it's so thin, I'm not concerned about it. But we did have before, and in fact, I do see, let's see how much. It's dry enough. That's going to continue to kind of harden. Getting up under that chip and cleaning it, there's going to be certain parts you just can't get to. And like I said, that is not going to cause a problem. But if you had kind of like a floating of it where it was up and over the pins, or even here, as you saw, I focused heat around there because there was a bit pulling up underneath this. You could go the route of ultrasonic cleaning it, but the amount of time and extra energy that takes, it's not something that most people want to pay for versus going out and buying a board. And like I said, at this level, you're as good as you need to be. I've got machines that are years out there of repair, and they may have even had more remaining residue than what this is. These particular boards, eventually it's on the list. This footprint of board requires quite a large ultrasonic tank, and I'm just not going to put them in a cheap ultrasonic tank. So in order to be able to service them properly, it's going to take about a $3,000 to $5,000 tank, and that is not there yet. If anybody would like to donate one, then if I tell you what, if one gets donated to me, every board will get that, no upcharge. I'd make that deal for sure. So I really don't want to buy it, but the likelihood of somebody donating one of those, it ain't happening anytime soon. All right. So I think we've covered everything that we need to do here, and I'm just ranting because, again, like I said, I'm hungry. That's certainly my next thing to do. We've replaced this chip. We've got our cleanup done. We've blow dried underneath the chips surrounding it. The next thing that we're going to do, and I'm going to save this for the reassembly video, is we're going to clean up the, let's see if we can get this in shot. We're going to clean off this thermal paste, and we're going to put down a new layer. And I'm actually probably going to wait to do this until I've got a shipment coming today from Amazon Prime. I actually didn't expect it until Monday, but I do got to say that sometimes it is very fast. And that shipment has in it something that I've had a question about for a long time. I bought it before and gotten bad stuff. In fact, I may find a tube of this stuff where it's the one that thermal paste companies tell you about. It shows up looking like shiny silver melted crayon. That's fake stuff where they've basically put like a dye, or I don't know what, it's not glitter, but man, that's about what they have poured into this stuff. And it is grease. It is not thermal paste. It is straight up greasy. I've got another tube which looks legit, but the price points on Amazon do not make sense based on what I've gotten as OEM and reseller pricing for legit straight from Arctic Silver. There is Arctic, which makes it MX4, and there's Arctic Silver, which makes the Arctic Silver 5, 3, I think they got a 2, those products. And I know plenty of people that use this stuff off of Amazon, and they say it's great. But if you're selling it after fees and shipping for less than it costs, unless you're just trying to dump stock because you buy it in bulk and you don't mind taking a loss on a few, but I don't think that's what's happening. Maybe they're buying bulk containers and then repackaging it with the labels, probably without the knowledge of Arctic Silver. But the price points, from what I've seen, the per gram prices when you buy it by the tube, the Amazon prices don't add up. And so I question the validity of that stuff being true Arctic Silver. But I've got some coming today, and I don't have any legit to test it against because they're such a pain in the ass to get true legitimate Arctic Silver from, because none of their distributors are verifiable, and those that are make you jump through their own set of hoops to buy. They say they're partnered with Newegg, but Newegg does not differentiate between their direct partnership sale and their independent third parties. And so because of that, most of the listings you find are independent third parties. There's no way to just quickly go and say, okay, I know I'm buying the legit. I may be paying extra, but I know it's going to be good stuff underneath. And Arctic Silver number 5 is good quality stuff. But if you're getting some kind of watered down knockoff version, it's probably not going to be as good. And for that reason, I've been mostly ordering Arctic, like MX4 product. They're a company that is well vendored, if that's a word to say it as. There's plenty of sources you can buy it from that are trusted, whereas Arctic Silver just makes it a pain. And I guess maybe that's just that their business niche is dealing with stores directly. So if you're not buying it off the shelf in a package from a retail shop, you just kind of take your chances. But when you're doing this for customers, you don't want to take chances with it. So eventually I'm going to buy directly from them, and then I'll know that I'm getting the same stuff that I used to be able to get from retail stores that just simply no longer carry it. But until then, I'm being hesitant. But I did finally go ahead and order it because I was like, you know what? Was it like $9, $8.50 or something like that, included shipping and whatever they pay Amazon. That was my flat rate, and it came in. I mean, today is technically, I think, the second day. So let's say $9. Let's just make it even $9, which is definitely 8 something. 2 3-gram tubes, and I can tell you, if they're selling legit stuff, they're losing money to sell it at that price. And if it's legit and they're selling it at a loss, well then I thank them. I appreciate the fact that they're willing to sell it to me for less than it cost them. But I think we're going to see something different when I unbox this and start to squirt some out. And we'll capture that on video too, and we'll see whether or not it's questionable, 100% legit, or 100% fake when it shows up. Alright, again, like always, we finished this video. We said we were just simply doing the repair. In the next video, when I do reassembly now, because we do have the aerial camera, we can actually do a full test where I can thread this in. It may not immediately come up because we're going to have to go into the system and switch off the HDCP, which is your high definition content protection. If you're trying to stream and you're unable to get video out, that is your problem. You need to turn that off because it communicates with your recording device, unless you're using some form of splitter which drops that communication protocol, and it instructs it that, hey, this content may be digitally protected, and so the PlayStation goes into a protect mode, which basically doesn't allow you to feed that video to it, or maybe it's on the capture side, it just ignores the video. But either way, it took me a couple of days to figure out that's why my setup wasn't working, and it had nothing to do with my Switch. But again, I digress. To get back on point, we did the repair now. This board is marked and tagged. In fact, let's just to show it. Alright, we've got my handwriting on the board. We're going to put this same board back into all of its components here. We're going to reassemble, and then we're going to connect this board and throw it through to the stream so that you can verify that the Ethernet now works. And it might not. There may be additional issues. And I did forget to do this, and I apologize, but I'm going to demonstrate this now because I actually had already done it before I even got started with the repair. I meant to do it before I was going to end this video, and now I'm finding reasons that we need to keep it running. But I'm going to demonstrate here real quick. I don't know why I didn't just move the camera. I'm being an idiot. Alright, so this is normal. Oh, son of a... Okay, so I may have some troubleshooting to do because guess what? That is what we got from the other one. But it went away when we removed it. So we had a short across all pins. Having a short on 2 in a pair, for whatever reason I'm getting that back on multiples. And I just don't have it documented as to whether or not that's normal on a functioning board of this model. But we should not, definitely not, be getting shorts across multiple pins. But now we're not. What the frickety frack? Okay, we may have just had a multimeter issue. As I've said in a previous video, it is time for me to swap. Okay, that is really weird. It was gone, now it's back. See what our ohm count is. We've got 1.7 and falling. And I'm almost certain that, check this, and we did not have backside shorts. I'd have to look this thing up to see which one are our data pins out. But I mean, I just checked all of these here, and we are not getting any tones on these probes, which makes me think that our shorts are just on the front side, which usually is an issue here at our chip, but we may have also an issue here if we've got some circuit protection. So we're going to figure that out. It will be in the next video. We will address that, and that will be later today. So again, today for sure doing 3 videos. I don't think I'm going to do any more than that, but we are going to figure out this Ethernet issue because we've got shorts on 1 out of our 4 sides, and we removed that chip and those shorts went away. We put the chip back and our shorts are back. So I really don't think we have a problem going here, but possibly our donor chip was on the brink because it was tested before it was pulled. So very possible that this chip was on the verge of failure, or even better, me being too grabby with, remember I showed you that this chip had some grabs. Very possible that I did penetrate a little too deep and I've caused an issue, but where those grabs are at, I wouldn't think that we would see that on the front side of the bus and not on the back. And I'm saying bus, that's maybe not appropriate, but on the front side of these traces and not back. I'm going to call it a bus. If that's not the term, feel free to correct me. But that's as far as we can go right now for this video. Like I said, when we come back a little bit later, we're going to address the rest of these issues. We're going to figure this out. Very rarely on this particular board do we have an Ethernet issue that I just say, you know what, it can't be figured out. So we're going to try to lock this one in today. Again, if you enjoyed this video, if you learned anything from it, feel free to give it a thumbs up. Let me know what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong. If you'd like to see different style videos, if you need me to change those angles. I do think that I do not like as much for this particular work. There's times where that aerial shot is effective, and there are times when it is not. I don't like it. If you don't like it, put it in the comments. Let me know so that I can determine if I need to move it, relocate it, do something else with it. Again, as always, hope you learned something. That is it for now. We'll be back in a few.